All right. Hey, welcome. We are live. Welcome to the Groomer's Cut. We are your Pet Pro professionals. Tonight, I am joined by Michelle Knowles, Melissa Contadiner, myself, Dara Forleo, and our special guest today to my side is Dave Campanella with Best Shot. And so I was tipped about first, I'm sorry, I always do this. Get going. We are streaming on 8 platforms tonight. Welcome back, Facebook. So that happened quickly. And if you are watching, please give Facebook permission to StreamYard so we can see your names in our chats. You might not see all the questions that are being asked. You might not see where everything is. So please let us know. We will answer all the questions and save them out so that whatever platform you are watching from, you will get that. And yes, tonight we are talking about storage. Everybody, I think this is a huge thing. We really have not talked a lot about this at a lot of places. I know Michelle touches on this in her classes with us, and I saw your podcast on Hey Joe and thought, we got to talk about this a little bit more. So we were welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
And Michelle, what do you think? Where should we start?
Well, I just broadly, I think it's important. We all talk about, and please forgive me, I've been going in and out of fevers for the last 3 days, so I am deathly ill over here.
Oh, no, sorry to hear that.
That's all right. So I'm just hanging on, drinking
myself.
So I think we've talked about, in general, in our industry, we've talked about how to mix, when to throw away, but not how to store our gallons and, let's face it, how they're stored before they even get to us. So all these can be a factor. You'll notice that on most gallons or large containers that are meant for professional use, it will say it'll have a temperature in which to store them safely so that they still are within their levels and whatnot. So it's really important, I think, to perhaps question manufacturers on a regular basis to say, hey, when I get it from the warehouse, is it air controlled? Is it kept in a shed in the Arizona heat? As a salon, if you buy in bulk, are you keeping your stuff in the garage and then just pulling it to the salon? All these things kind of matter.
What kind of shipping
conditions? Yes.
Yeah.
Normally, if you freeze something, it doesn't do as much damage. You may have some discoloration or separation, but heat really does a number on our products. What do you think, Dave?
Absolutely. The thing that got me motivated, I've been in this industry for pushing 17 years, in the shampoo pushing close to 17, and I've been in the pet industry for 3 decades. And as a manufacturer, nobody likes to deal with the issue of spoilage. The distributors don't like dealing with it. The manufacturers traditionally have it. If I cough from time to time, it's because I'm dry, forgive me. But really what I found was that nobody wants to be bothered with the problem. And then what happens is, if it's a good customer, what does a distributor do? Oh, well, they go to the manufacturer and then there's some pressure and they'll opt right away without any investigation to maybe replace a product, or sometimes, hey, sorry, you're out of luck. But nobody addresses the problem. Mm-hmm. And what I can tell you is, more often than not, when you get premature spoilage from a manufacturer, it can be possible. Sometimes kooky things happen. They might get a bad fragrance or whatever, but that's such a small percentage. We're talking about a fraction of a percent of actual bona fide spoilage occurrences. The problem, dun, 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 is that there is some ignorance out there. And ignorance, if you look it up in the dictionary, it's not a horrible word, but no one explains, and I put it on the manufacturers and the distributors, because it starts there, how to properly store and care for products and to address the expectation. Honestly, most people, they think it's shampoo, it cleans. how can it spoil, right? I mean, they don't even think.
Yeah.
And then when I do get those occasional calls, I'll get the photo of the gallon with the extended gallon pump and all the goo on it. And they'll be describing things. And, oh, you know, we keep our shop climate controlled, and boom, boom, boom. And in their minds, you know, people feel that they're doing a good job because you can't see bacteria. When you do finally smell it, I got news for you. Long before you could even notably smell it, it was teeming with bacteria.
Right. It's been there for a while.
You may be finding this out weeks later. And what I decided to do was start to stick my neck out, and we put some things on our website as well as just to our distributors initially, you know, giving good common sense guidelines. And then I started doing more podcasts and kind of getting the word out, speaking on behalf of everybody, you know, because, you know, I think all manufacturers would benefit from having an open, honest discussion. I'll stop there.
You know, Dave, that's one of the reasons why I adore your friendship so much, because you are probably the most transparent manufacturer of grooming products that I've ever met. And you are totally respected by me, and I really enjoy your input. I really do. And I think that it does bring up a certain conversation when we are buying so much money. We've talked about this before, the three of us, I'm sure. But listen, if you're going to open a salon, let's take it to just the basics. Open a salon and you want it to be a high end, even if you're just a regular salon. You put money into the curtains and the color of the paint and the tables and all your expensive shears and this, and that, and the other. And then so many of us say, well, we're going to skimp on shampoo. So then they skimp on shampoo and get the economy, which is fine if that's your market and that's what you're doing. No, that has no bearing. However, it does make a bearing on how you store that. How do you store your shampoos? An economy shampoo will last so much longer and probably work better stored properly. And that goes for any thing. And it was so funny. I've had these lined up on my desk for just such a show as this. For anybody who does a lot of mixing of their, of course, I'm not paid by them in any way. If anybody hasn't seen the actual and had hands-on of the infinity jars, these are the most luxurious, lovely way to store your oils, your mixtures. You cannot see through them. The seals are superior. Like, I can't get over it. Once I touched these, I was like, I probably won't ever use another glass jar again. These are fantastic.
Those are plastic?
No.
Glass. Okay. So I was gonna go to that.
Deep purple.
Brown purple? Okay.
They have single wall, they have double wall. So anybody who packages their own stuff, infinity jars, wow, pretty impressed. Back to the subject. Lots of our shampoos come in plastic containers.
Yeah.
They're not opaque. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't, because they want you to see their luxurious color and
that's
the
what
product
I was
in the bottle. However, that brings up an important point. The way they're packaged matters. How you store them matters according to how they're packaged, so that you don't end up transferring all that bacteria and whatnot onto your pet and onto yourselves. Let's face it. We are the major users of dog shampoos. We use them on dogs, but we use them on us every day, all day. You know, so it does matter. It does matter.
Yep. If I could interject too, when you were talking about people get in the business and they start looking at what table do I buy and what color do I paint the walls and the curtains, it's funny. It's a business. No one takes the time to look at what the risks are. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people know me as Best Shot Sales and Marketing Director. They don't know that I got into this business because I married a groomer. Okay, and we owned together a shop together. So I was in the trenches, you know, working in the back. You know, I've actually done the job, which I think maybe gives me a unique perspective in the marketing and in the customer service and in what I do. But when we talk about risks, you know, sure, you can get bit by a dog, you can injure a dog. There's all those fun things. Whole nother conversation for another day. But we don't talk about because we don't talk openly about dispensing liquids, we don't talk about the risks associated with that. This is a real problem because it's all, we got to be honest and we have to be accountable. What I tell people is shampoos are mostly water volume. And in the article I wrote, I figured I got to find a clever hook to get across to people. And I said, Leonardo da Vinci, he's a cousin of mine, Italian. I paraphrase, but basically he's quoted as, alluding that water fosters life. Unfortunately, it fosters bad bacteria too. Mm-hmm. And it's not a matter of if your products are going to spoil. They're going to spoil. If you're using your products up, you may never have an issue. Then I'll get people, they'll call from time to time, oh, we've always used this product, and all of a sudden I've opened it, and 30 to 40 days later, it's spoiling. And when you dig a little deeper, you find, okay, there's a new bather. You see a little spoiler alert here about dispensing. And then I'll reel back in and try to get on a pattern here. But people don't, let me stay focused here. People don't acknowledge that these things spoil. When they see it separated, when they get a alleged claim of an itchy dog, the assumption is, oh, it must have been a bad batch. Well, wait a minute. Okay, so there's a denial that it must have been a bad batch and the shampoo is causing the dog to have these problems. Okay, well, here's where the dilemma is. If you're a distributor, you don't want to dismiss the customer. And is this a PG-13 rated?
Yeah.
You say
you're good. Go for it.
Can I say that? We don't want to piss off the customer. So everybody's walking on eggshells here, but they're not addressing the problem. And then if you suggest that the groomer did something wrong, well, then no, as a manufacturer, we're the evil entity that's, out to slowly kill you over time without you knowing it, and we just want to save a buck. No, that's not the case. What we don't realize is that in our shops, the humidity, if you're in a mobile grooming trailer, you have condensation on your walls. Look inside your bottles as those bottles deplete and there's more area, open area in that jug. It attracts more condensation. Water attracts bacteria. And usually when you get these complaints, the majority of the time, the bottles have been well depleted. There's an open pump. Spoiler alert, when the pump's open and extended, it's breathing. It's no different than taking the cap off. Mm-hmm. You can push those down and twist them and lock them. I think the problem is nobody wants to push them down and waste that little bit of stuff that squirts out of
they make little caps for the end of those pumps now when they didn't used to. But now you can actually cap them. And in a pinch, use a piece of tape. Use some vet wrap. Use something to keep the airflow from going in and out.
But it's just like, when was the last time we wiped down our walls? Now, I'm saying this not as a manufacturer. I ran a shop.
Yeah.
I've done this. And you get busy. When was, and then you'd wipe down the wall because it's been a couple of days and you're like, oh my God, I should do this twice a day. Mm-hmm. And you look at all of this, the things, we forget that there's dander, there's, pollen, there's hair, there's poop, there's pee, there's your bathing room is not like the shower at home. Your shower at home, unless, you have 13 kids or, it's not 8 hours of humidity. Okay, let's be honest. So I'm taking this moment to just kind of the shock and awe to get people to take a step back. And here's the point. If we were in the medical profession, they have serums, vaccines, blood, plasma. There are very detailed, strict protocol on how to take care and dispense these things. You just heard on the news about all the COVID vaccines, that got wasted because they weren't cared for right or misplaced or they exceeded. I'm not trying to make this complicated. It isn't rocket science, but there needs to be mindful accountability. And let's be honest, if you as a groomer, and maybe you guys can answer this better to your audience, when there's a problem, is the assumption to assume to play the blame game, or is it let's do a little CSI and take a few steps back? People don't know what they don't know about shampoo, and that's why we're having this conversation.
Sure.
You know, Melissa, I've been
I'm just
talking and
listening.
gabbing away.
I'm just listening because I like Michelle, I'm always in awe of you. I recommend your products, and I always say I'm not compensated by Best Shot, but that's my always go-to recommendation, because I always talk to them about read your ingredients, know what's in the product, talk to the reps, get information. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are like, oh, well, nobody tells us anything. And I always say, go talk to Dave Campanella.
Yeah.
So a lot of things that we have to remember also, I'm sure that all of us in one form or another have visited many salons, talked to many other groomers or whatever. And sometimes you see that your bathing practices or your storage practices are maybe not that great. And, it's always the other person who doesn't have the clean tubs. Maybe it's time to relook at what your tub room looks like, what your storage area looks like. Does it have hair? Does it have old shampoo stuck to the bottom of the shelves?
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, I've also seen people take their full gallon, take the lid off, set it inside the tub, and they're just pouring from it and then onto the dog, and that dirty water splashing into their gallon. Yeah. Just because it has a little opening does not mean that water can't get in there and spray and grossness and everything else can get in there. So you have to treat your products like they're a sturdy, perishable potato salad is how I look at it.
Right.
They're
exactly
delicate.
Right.
They're delicate. Yeah. They are actually formulated, for those of you who don't know. Our products are formulated, and it's a delicate balance. It's it's artful. It's an art and it's skill.
And this
to get
brings
everything to mesh together.
This brings up another thing is people say, well, what's the expiration date? You ever see Pirates of the Caribbean with, what are they? What was it? I'm blowing my punchline here, but the Pirates Code is more or less a guideline. Well, that's pretty much what the
expiration is.
Yeah, I mean, all you can do, you have expiration dates and you have these things called preservatives. Preservatives are only going to do so much. Their job is to prolong the useful, safe, formulation, the efficiency of that formula to kind of, let's just say postpone spoilage from occurring.
They're the Spartan 300. That's what I consider them.
Yeah, I mean, what we're looking at is it's based on what's a reasonable amount of time for product to be used and how it's being used and dispensed. Mm-hmm. Just because a product, I could tell you our product has a typical 2-year shelf life. Doesn't mean anything. It's not etched in granite. Mm-hmm. To your earlier points, it could have been sitting in a hot trailer in Arizona or the desert somewhere over the weekend. You don't know. I always cringe back in the day when we got into this and we'd go to some shows, somebody would come in and they'd place, a big order, and for some shops, they go through $2,500 of shampoo a month, okay, that's great. But you'd get to talking to people and it's like, wow, they're buying an 18-month supply. Where do you store this stuff? Right. There's so many things that can happen to that product
in 18 months.
Months. Mm-hmm. And you start to realize, man, I just did myself a disservice because they're going to open this product, and if they're not using some of these products that often, and it's sitting under the tub with an open pump and all the other little things that we talk about, within days it's going to spoil, or they may open it after 18 months. They didn't notice it was a wobbler, and you hear that, the smell, and you got a problem. And they think, wow, this isn't right. Well, that's another reason why I kind of stuck my neck out and I wrote an article for Groomer to Groomer, which was, I kind of prefaced it on Joe Zuccarella's podcast that you heard. But the point was, the idea is, let's talk about this stuff. Let's put the guidelines there. I tell people, if you go to Groomer, in the September issue, it's called an in-depth guide to safely storing and dispensing liquid products. I tell people, cut and paste it. I tell my distributors, plagiarize it. I don't care. This is good information that is fact-based. It's based on 30 years of experience, and let's just talk about this, because you go online, social media, and it's not uncommon to see somebody venting about a spoiled gallon of something or other. And they go to the group, and a lot of them say, "Oh, that's terrible. Off with that company's heads. Try brand X instead. I never have that problem." And I'm just like, really? Nobody's talking about what we're talking about here. So, what I try to do is put together some guidelines. When it comes to storage, I try to keep it simple. I tell people, preferably, you got to keep it out of the sun and under 80 degrees. That's high. I tell people, the cooler, the better.
Yeah, right around 60 to 65 degrees is probably ideal.
It would be ideal, but for some people, they can't do it, because let's look at a shop, So that's the first thing. The cooler, the better. The other thing I tell folks is, when that product comes in, get a Sharpie right on the bottle.
Date
the date you got it, but also write on it the date you opened it. And then and keep that receipt. What most people don't realize, because nobody likes to talk about it, because all of us manufacturers are avoiding, don't want to upset anybody, but most products are guaranteed for 30 to 45 days after you purchased it. That's it. Oh my gosh, well, why is that? What's the expiration date? Two different things, because a lot can happen, especially with a professional, from when they open that bottle. A lot can happen. So my point is, please get a shoebox. If you're bad at filing, hold on to all of your receipts, because if you call a manufacturer, they simply need verification.
Right.
And if they can't verify when you purchased it or who you purchased it from, they've got nothing.
Well, think about it this way as well. We all know the animal that we groom one day, and then 2 days, a week, or a month later, we get a phone call or a bad review on Google to say, well, my dog was bleeding and he had a terrible rash and his foot was hanging off, or whatever. Pick your thing that they're accusing you of. When you know good and well, that dog left on all 4 feet, happy, wagging his tail, no rashes, everything's fine. We do not control. We have no control over what happens to the animal when it leaves our salon. The same can be said for a manufacturer. They have to, by law, manufacture to a certain standard before they can sell you a retail item, especially in this country. I mean, I can't speak for other countries. I don't live there. But
well, it's real simple. If we're knowingly out there doing something, or even unknowingly doing something, and it's causing massive grief, that's a felony. So,
I mean, it behooves a manufacturer to make sure that they adhere to the standards by law that they have to adhere to in order to sell their products. A manufacturer has a lot of overhead, a lot of shrinkage, a lot of damage, and they don't want one thing going out that is going to cause an issue, because that's just a hassle and a headache. Nobody wants that. Yep. So for the most part of them, I'm going to say, let's just be general. Some are just out to make a buck, and they're churning out some crap and whatever. I don't know who they are. I can't name them, but I'm sure they're out there. But for the most part, they have no control over their product once it leaves their distributor's hands. And once you store it in your willy-nilly way, they don't know what happened to it. You could be the worst person and not know it on storing products. You could be the best, most high-end shop and still be storing it all out in the trunk of your car in the heat.
That's exactly
you have
right.
to make sure you understand storage matters.
And my point when I wrote the article was, I made a point about, I love Barkley. They kind of edited down my original version. So maybe Dara if you want to get a hold of the original unedited article with all the,
We would love
We
that.
would.
I'd love to send that to. But
The
I,
unabridged
We
version.
will put it in the appropriate
Yeah.
places.
yeah, and when I did Joe's podcast, he let me add it. And
Yes.
I made a reference. When we went through, let me just tell you a story. Try to keep this short, and kind of give you a perspective.
Real quick, Dave, I just want to go really quick because
Yeah.
we're not getting our comments in the feed tonight.
Oh. Okay.
So we did have a question a little bit ago back to,
Yeah.
so I'm scrolling back and forth trying to watch all of our platforms on Facebook because it's not catching up tonight. So they're still working on whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you
Let's
guys,
answer
if
some
anybody,
questions.
yeah, if any viewers are out there, just send me a message, a private message, one of us, because we are not seeing the comments on our feed. But one viewer, I believe it was Ashley, and she asked, how come they don't do half gallons? Some companies have done liters, which doesn't seem like enough, but for a smaller shop, it seems like a half gallon. Maybe for distributors and manufacturers, it wouldn't be as value, but
that's a good question, and I'll try to keep it simple. It's pretty much demand driven, and when you're sourcing packaging, gallon jugs are a standard size jug. You can get them. You can stock them. The half gallons, you can get them. They're pretty much allocated probably to larger industries, probably more food or more chemical, and it's harder to get those, and the gallon seems to be the commodity.
And unless a bunch of us, probably 3/4 of the industry that started demanding half gallons, it probably wouldn't be cost effective for a manufacturer to switch over a sizing.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So, I have a question.
Yes.
That I get asked quite often whenever I discuss products and product usage and how they're supposed to be taken care of. Because I'm a date writer. I'm a list maker and a dater with my Sharpie. I even date the backs of my brushes so that I can rotate them from the front to the bathing area even, and then throw them away after so much time. But the standing shampoo, this drives me crazy, and people want to not empty those mixing bottles at the end of the day, and they want to just reuse that after it's been sitting all day, or it's maybe been mixed twice throughout the day. And instead of tossing it at the end of the day, they just leave it in the tub and they use it again in the morning until they use up what's left of it. I'm a mix what you need right then and there, and then you don't have standing water with product in it. And what's your thoughts on that, Mr. Campanella?
Use it up.
Okay.
Dilute what you need for that day. You may initially, if that's a new concept for someone, they may end up wasting a little bit, but you'll soon learn to mix a little more wisely for the allotted time for that day. It's a guideline. It's no one can know. So the idea is if you dilute what you need and are doing it properly and not contaminating the original bulk packaging you're pouring from, that's the way to do it. It brings up another point about mixing bottles. A lot of us don't know how to properly use mixing bottles. And as a reference, as a backup, and I know I'm promoting groomer to groomer, but everybody gets it, or I'm assuming they can get it online. So I'm using this as a reference. So if you want to get more detail, more information, I would encourage you to print out a copy of that article and post it in your shop or by your bathing room, But to the point about mixing bottles, first of all, I'm going to back up. Folliculitis. Do we know what it is?
Yes.
So you get these little bumps and these little scabby bumps all over you. It can happen with people. It can happen in hot tubs. People using what what are the little scrunchies? The loofah.
The loofahs, yeah.
You know, I mean, if it's same thing happens with shampoo, you know, and again, you can't, you know, when you can smell it and it's like, oh, it doesn't smell bad. You can still smell the fragrance. You don't know if it's brewing underneath there. Okay. Folliculitis happens. Mixing bottles are notorious for cross-contamination. Here's a couple things that I talk about. And this is based on 3 decades of our company in shampoo and what you learn even in production. Okay, there's certain things you learn the hard way, even as a manufacturer. When you get a mixing bottle, designate that bottle to that specific product. Don't have a generic bottle that you rinse out with hot water and use on, you know, various products. Why is that? Well, what you learn, these are plastic bottles. Depending on the ingredients, the essential oils, does it have D-limonene? Is there a eucalyptus? You know, there's certain ingredients that are going to basically contaminate the inside of the.
Say it, Dave. They're going to eat into the plastic.
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to linger into that bottle. So that bottle is tainted. So you want to designate it for that product. When you mix or different products, you run the risk of contamination. The advantage of using a mixing bottle is you're basically confining your product. What you're by not designating bottles and cleaning them properly, and I'll touch on that, you can run the risk of spreading some folliculitis and other things, pseudomonas and other. There's a whole list of things we could talk about, and we don't need to go there. You know, but I mean, just know it's real easy for bacteria. So one thing that I hear people do is they'll say, "Oh, I use an essential oil to clean my bottles," and I'm like, you know, slap me. You can't do that. What's the easiest way? Dish detergent, hot water. That's probably your safest bet. But the big thing is, what you want to do is at the end of the day, when all the hair is done floating and it's settled, you want to clean that bottle with soapy water, really hot water if you can. A dishwasher's the best, but not everybody has that at their shop. But then get a towel and lay it across the grate in your tub and stack those bottles upside down. So when you come in the morning, they are dry. Because what happens is there's a little bit of water. For all the vinegar people, and Michelle, you know, my thoughts on vinegar people.
I do.
You know, I mean, you know, I love vinegar. I'm Italian, but you know.
Vinegar has its uses, but disinfecting is probably not one of them.
Yeah, but if there's a little bit of whatever you use, disinfectant, you know, vinegar, soapy water, that little bit can contaminate. I'm doing my hand gestures. Same holds true with a pump. You know, with the pumps, you know, we need to clean them out. We need to clean them out with hot water. But then if you can disassemble them, same rule. Stack them on a towel, let them dry. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that we do at Best Shot and other manufacturers do with their equipment, and, you know, we have a whole new regimen of disinfecting that we do because of COVID and our social distancing. But they go over the whole area, but the components in the machine are broken down each day before people leave. They're disinfected, and we do the same thing I'm telling you. So that way, when they come in the morning, they're wiped off, they're dry. Then they go back in the machinery, you know, and we begin our process again. These are just common sense protocols that people just don't know.
That restaurants use to their soda machines, to all their equipment has to be broken down every night, cleaned and dried thoroughly so that it's ready for service the next day. It's really not that hard.
And what happens when you get that malted shake and you're out on the road and 2 hours later you got to find someplace to pull over? Oh, must have been a bad batch. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
But my point is, you know, we got to be able to laugh. We got to be, hopefully your listeners are like, oh my gosh, you know, I do that thing with the pumps and I didn't realize that I can be doing things better. That's okay. You didn't know what you didn't know. Nobody's judging here.
No,
You know,
not at
the
all.
only people,
We're
the
here
only
to
people,
talk about it. We're here to talk about
Right.
the things that aren't talked about.
exactly. But I'll turn it back over. Any other questions, Dara?
I'm scrolling through looking. We had some comments over on the Pet Pro Educators page. A tabletop dishwasher to watch mixing bottles. That's interesting.
That's
Liz
always a
also
thought.
agrees. She wants an original.
So my solution to the squirt bottles is actually I stopped using them to dispense the shampoo onto pets. I simply don't use them. Now we do use the ketchup containers that unscrew from the top and the bottom to store undiluted product. So each one has their own, because sometimes you have to grab it and squirt it in a bowl.
Sure.
I use a bowl and I mix for every individual. Now I know people think that takes forever. It takes 2 seconds. It really doesn't take that long. You can still dilute it in the bowl. Then I get this. I said, well, how do you pour it on the pet? It kicks it over and does this. Now I've been experimenting with a mini watering can, a little plastic mini watering can. It absolutely directs the diluted shampoo, and I can still bleach it out, dry it very easily because you can get in all the pieces. That's a better way, I feel, in my experience, of dispensing shampoo and getting your dispenser clean.
Yeah.
What about the automatic shampooers? You know what I'm talking about? The bathing systems with all the fishing with those
They
clear
still
lines
have to be broken down and cleaned.
Right.
The same rules approach. Here's some things that people don't realize. And I break down bathing systems into 3 types of bathing systems when I talk about them. We've got recirculating pumps, the pump that sits in the tub. Okay. You've got the metering systems, which is that unit that hangs on the wall with all the little things hanging. I'm watching myself in video. I'm Italian. If I sat on my hands, I wouldn't have anything to say. But with the metering systems, those are the ones with all the hoses coming out, going to the gallons.
Right.
And then you have a premix applicator is how I define them. And that's your Cosmos or your Primas or your, where you're putting a premix into a container, and those are the 3 types. I'm going to back step and say what you were talking about earlier, Michelle, with your process. You're using cleaning cycles. If you think of like a washing machine, and you have a rinse cycle and all the different cycles. That's what the bathing process is when you're mindfully using the different shampoos or conditioners and the process. And with the recirc, the biggest thing that people don't realize is at the end of the day, you want to rinse it out with hot water, and you want to do that same thing. If you can take the bottom off or put it in a way where you let it dry out, and take that hose off and let it dry out. And a tip I tell folks, if you go to Amazon and you look up aquarium hose pipe filters or filters cleaners, you'll see these real long filters. They're like a pipe cleaner, but they're big for cleaning aquarium hoses. Perfect for getting in there and getting all that crud and grime and whatnot out. But you want to rinse these things, you hang them up and you let them dry. For those older folks out there that have things like CPAP machines and other things, same common sense. You clean them up, you let them air dry.
If you don't clean those out, you can get an infection that can kill you. It's the same thing. And I just want to interject. Please. As you're using your squirt bottles, and if you're doing all the right things and you're disinfecting them and you're letting them dry and you're doing all that, and yet I challenge all of you who use this method. Pick up your dry squirt bottle and lid and look at it. And if there's any dirt on it, it is not clean. You need to get in there when you clean them with a toothbrush and make sure all the gunk from the screw top where the opening is, scrub all that out. And that lid, that flip top lid or whatever kind of lid you use, shouldn't have a ring of gunk around anything. Get in there and scrub all those things out, because that's where the gunk is coming from.
You reminded me of something as you were saying that too. The number one thing when you're pouring and dispensing in smaller containers, wash your hands. Don't do it while you're doing a dog in the tub. Your hands are full of slop. You're going to get that slop in the bottle. I go out and I mow the lawn. If I walk in with my shoes, I'm going to get grass everywhere in my house. It's just common sense, that we got to look at. The premix applicator systems like the Primas and the Cosmos systems, the problem with those, there's nothing wrong with these systems. They're all good. People just don't understand them, and they haven't had this type of conversation among others. You get these systems, and some of them have a 5-gallon plus size reservoir.
Right.
If you're a one groomer shopper, you're only doing 6 dogs a day. I'm not saying you wasted your money on that unit. That unit's more prone to a bigger facility doing higher volume.
I'm going to say it. You're probably wasting your money by using that system. See how we talk here? You can say that.
No. I have to be a diplomat because I know all of these companies and I've had conversations with all the owners.
But you're right. It's not that they're a bad system. It's that it's not a good match for the single.
It's not a good match. But take a cup or two, put that in it. Don't fill it up all the way. Because guess what? If it's sitting in there for a week, you're going to get all those little bumps and scabs on some of these dogs.
Yeah.
You stop doing it and start only putting what you need in those systems. If you were getting calls and issues, you're going to see a drop. I guarantee you will, just because you're using it mindfully. Right. And the same thing applies, to the hoses and cleaning. You want to make sure they're dry and there's nothing excess cleaning solution or anything in there that's going to cause problems. The metering systems with the hoses get to be a little tricky. The number one thing is, remember when I talked about gallon pumps and when they're extended open, they breathe? Well, some of the fittings on these gallons may be openings there. If you're seeing goop accumulate around the hose where it goes in the cap, that means condensation was there. You're getting some bacteria. That could be getting in the bottle. Make sure your fittings are tight. I've seen a very clever person. I wish I could remember her name. She'd put it in a plastic bag and a twisty around the gallon and the hose just to keep it protected because there's all that hair.
That's brilliant. I've seen them lined up like that with the hoses stuck in them and hair and grossness and everything just stuck in there. And they're like, yeah, those are brand new gallons. And I'm like, oh, okay. So there's nothing wrong with the systems themselves. They're just, they're cleaning intensive. You do have to clean them. And if you have a high volume shop, sometimes that can be a huge time saver to have that shampoo be dispensed like that. Understood. However, if you're a smaller shop, maybe consider doing individual dispensation of product for per dog, because you do save product like that. They're less likely to contaminate your gallons, and it works out. I'd rather spend more time with the dog than cleaning any day. So I take the least amount of cleaning I can possibly do. I go to a bowl. It's easy. You wipe it out, you disinfect it, you turn it upside down, it dries.
Right. And that's why if you use one of those systems, which I've used quite a few different ones, and some of them are amazing if you are doing high volume, but the time that you're making up for, not having to mess with the shampoo and do all that stuff, you're going to need to take that extra time that you're creating by utilizing this system, by maintaining that equipment properly also. And that's what I don't think I don't think the bathing systems are the problem. I think that it's user error, that we just don't understand the proper way to clean and sanitize these things so that we are not cross-contaminating and we're not causing things like folliculitis and, for the animals and for ourselves, because I've seen groomers get rashes all over their hands. And so, it has to be a two-step program. It can't just be this saves us time and we don't clean it, but once a month.
And for the salons who are constantly experiencing problems with their shampoo, you might love your shampoo, but then over and over again, you're finding a bad gallon here, a bad gallon there. Trust me, it's probably how you're storing and dispensing and cleaning your items having to do with your products, rather than a manufacturer can't stay alive.
But here's an important point. Most companies, and we've been like I can, speaking for Best Shot, on all of our gallon products, there's a black inkjet code we've been putting underneath the gallon bottle. Now, what does that tell us? Here's what we want. If you experience a problem, don't assume, I mean, yes, take the time to look and see what you're doing. But if you're seeing a pattern and it's reoccurring, by all means, feel free. You should feel free to call the manufacturer. Now, if you get a bad experience with the manufacturer, I can't speak to that. You know, if you call us, we're going to listen. We're going to try our hardest not to try, you know, to dismiss you. And
Dave, don't they normally have like a batch number on them?
Yeah, there's a like we use an inkjet code on the bottom, and what that tells us is, and this is why it's so important to have receipts and to be able to verify your purchase. And let me back up. Think about it when the lady calls and you say, "What kind of dog do you have?" And they say, "Oh, it's a whatever." And do you have it? Does it have its rabies shots? Oh, sure. And then they come in and you don't know what the hell the dog is, and you have no verification if the dog has its shots. Mm-hmm. Are you going to groom that dog?
Probably.
Think of it when you call the manufacturer. The same reason. We want to be able to verify. And what we're going to do is we'll look at where it was purchased and when, and you know, maybe it's just outside of 30 days, or for us it's 45 days of purchase. But we've been known to go beyond that, because you know, we're going to take a look at that batch code, and that's going to tell us something. And if there was, you know, a problem, and again, highly unlikely. And I'm going to share something that I'm assuming here. I'm making a gross assumption on behalf of other manufacturers. Okay, but in 3 decades of manufacturing shampoos, the typical culprit of something going bad is the fragrance. You get or an ingredient that was out of spec, and it wasn't quite right, and you know, it exhausted. Most companies are running continual batches. They don't like, okay, let's make our annual ultra shampoo batch this year, you know, and they make 30,000 gallons. That's not how this works, you know. I mean, they may make 100 or 500 or 1,000 or 2,500. But, you know, when there's a problem to a manufacturer and it's a legitimate problem, the switchboard lights up like a Christmas tree. It happened once for Best Shot. Let me just, I'm saying this to kind of put everybody at ease and everybody have common sense. When Mike Gallagher, our owner, bought the company, he said, you know, I'm going to pull the color out of our top selling products, and we're just going to go without a color. Okay, that's a thing now. Oh my God, you would have thought we destroyed the product, because how was anybody to tell in their mixing bottle if it was white, the ultra wash and the conditioner was white, and it's like you just took the color out. My point is when there's a problem, the manufacturer knows there's a problem. If there's a real big problem, a responsible manufacturer is going to recall and contact all of his distributors.
Absolutely.
Most of the cases that you're dealing with here are isolated occurrences. And I've in my many years of doing this, I've regretfully, I look back and it's like, you know, I gave away some product and, you know, hey, I made a customer happy, but I don't think it was us. Right. And then you get the people where it's a repetitive problem. And going back to an earlier point, that I one of the things that got me into doing this, we had a particular distributor. I won't say when over the years, but when I looked at our alleged spoilage claims, which again, fraction of a percent, 2/3 of our complaints were coming from this one distributor. We were able to look, we were able to find out what the problem was. It originated with the distributor. That same distributor, you know, when, you know, we're trying to support, be friendly. Oh, we had a shampoo go bad. Can you replace it? Sure. That never solved the problem. All it did was enable this to go on and on and on. And nobody gets helped and we're forgetting about the dog. So
wow, Dave, wow, you just blew my mind. Wow, really? Is it about the dog? Is it about the dog?
But I mean, because nobody wants to deal with the problems.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of got me doing this. And that if I'm the guy who sticks his neck out and gets the conversation going, hey,
No, I believe that there's a place for every product out there, every piece of equipment. There's a proper place and way to use that product or equipment. I really do. Yeah. However, in the glut of marketing and capitalism and everybody trying to make their name in the world, there is a glut of people just making these things and not properly training the end user, basically, because we're the end user. We get stuck with the product or the equipment or the whatever at the very end, and then we are not as knowledgeable as we should be about the care of the product or equipment and how to actually use it effectively in our salon.
And I think that's something so lacking, Michelle, in our industry, because I come from a beauty background industry where they educate their people so much. They have people that come into the salons and go over products and how to use it properly, and that is such a huge part of the beauty industry itself, that for us as groomers and for us that are on the Master Groomer Council that are trying to get standards and practices for our industry, that is a huge thing. Sanitation and using the equipment properly and being trained by the people who create these products for us.
Yeah. The same thing happens in the veterinary industry.
Yes.
They're called lunch and learns. If a new drug comes on the market or a new technique or whatever, they have somebody come out and train people how to do it, tell them the ins and outs of it, tell them the contraindications, which are things that could go wrong, and what percentages those are. Those are all important pieces of information for the end user. And I think that as we are becoming more professional, more recognized as a trade, these things are things we have to discuss. And we can't be afraid of saying, something bad happened with that product or something great happened with that product.
Exactly.
There are going to be bad things happening with every product at one time or another. We can't be afraid of saying a manufacturer has to be tough enough to weather the storm of something bad happening with one of their products. And that's part of it. Not everybody's going to use it the same. Somebody may err horribly and use it very wrongly, or be using it within the specs and still have something go wrong. Piece of equipment, a brush.
I'm just going to say one thing to that. Eye ulcerations. I'm going to leave it at that. But that's a classic example.
Yes.
It was careless.
All these things have to be taken into consideration. I think that because it's for dogs, it's not regulated. I think it's because we're groomers and we're fly by night or whatever. However it used to be back in the day, it's not that way now. And I think that manufacturers have a duty and a responsibility and an obligation to train their end user correctly. And if their distributors are responsible for doing that, then they have to hold their distributors accountable for training the end user properly about all of the things that could happen.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I got to jump over because we got to talk about something.
Sure.
I got a message from Groomer Jen. She asked earlier, when should mixing bottles be replaced? As soon as they start to show discoloration.
Yeah, I think
before that, I mean,
if you're waiting until they start to break down and get discolored, or then I think you've waited a little too long.
Yeah.
Here's a suggestion that I have, and I use this same suggestion on taking care of equipment like dryers and things like that. When it comes to mixing bottles, just tell yourself, is 6 months a reasonable period? Is 8 months? I mean, if you've had this bottle, it's your favorite bottle, and you had it when you opened your shop 9 years ago, please get rid of that bottle.
Retire it and put it on a shelf and look at it, right?
And we were talking about the Sharpie, with writing the date of, on the gallons. Well, how about writing a date, your own expiration date? It's an idea. And all you're doing, how do I want to say this? You're trying to just get in front of the problem. The one bad thing of some of the rogue social media out there is it's taken away common sense. People are too lazy to think, and it's like, hey, everybody, I had this happen. What do I do? That doesn't work. The reality is we're trying to get ahead of the problem and be mindful. I beat that word to death. Be present. Says so in the cup. My wife, wife got me this.
All of our middle names are mindfulness.
Yeah.
My wife got me this. She said, for all those things you do on mindfulness, this is just a little reminder for at home. But yeah, I mean, all we're trying to do is get in front of the problem. It's managing expectation. It's managing problems. That's what we're in the business for. We manage our customers. We could have this same, we could be talking about getting ahead of the shedding season and cycle and how to educate consumers on what to know. I do a seminar called Shed Happens. It's the same principle. You're getting ahead of the problem and you're doing what? You're creating a dialogue and you're talking about it, to address it.
But
that's
understanding that it is all a process. And your process might be different than my process.
Exactly.
So by just saying, hey, this happened to me, what do I do? I was using this bottle and this is what happened. No, because how you're using it might be completely different. We may use that same exact product, but we use it completely differently. I may be in super high volume, and Michelle worked with me. We used to have to date everything. I was like the Sharpie Nazi, but that's just how I operate. And so, we used to have to get rid of those bottles.
No chemicals on the floor. Like it was crazy.
No chemicals on them. I mean, I had a whole shit ton of rules, but that's how I operated my salons.
Yeah.
And so other people may have different sets of parameters. So even though we want to reach out and ask and start a dialogue within our industry, we need to get into the habit of start to say how we're actually using these things and how this problem actually occurred, and not just, I use a mixing bottle and now we've had a case of folliculitis come in.
And I want you to remove the factor of shame. There's no shame in doing things incorrectly and not knowing.
No, that's
once you find out, guess what? Then you get to do better. That's all. That is all there is. No one here is shaming anyone for keeping their bottles around or maybe not using a toothbrush or whatever. But you know what? What we're talking about today may make you think about your processes. And
when you know better, you do better.
Yeah, you might want to think about your own processes and your rate of product failure.
Yeah.
And then that might put into perspective some of the practices that you're using.
Now I'm going to share another quick little story. So I'm at Hershey, and my article just came out, talking about what we're talking about. And somebody comes in, and this is where people don't like this because they think, if the person somehow figures out who they happen to be on your thing listening, and if they happen to, the concern is I'm going to offend that one person. Nobody knows, and I'm not judging. But this person came in and they said, I want you to know that I bought your one product and it went bad, and it happened to me twice. And my first response was, when did you get it? And she said, well, I got it from you at this show. And mind you, we're in a pandemic. And my response was, are you sure I wasn't at that show? It wasn't 2020 because the show was canceled. We're talking 2019.
Right.
And the product went bad like 6, 7, 8 months. And all I said to her was, wow, I wish I could help you on that. When you get an occurrence like this, it's so important to call us right away, or the distributor. Everything we talked about today. Yeah. And I'm thinking, this is a God wink. I have this extra issue of Groomer to Groomer September. I'm going to hand it to her. that didn't go well. She says, no, you're trying to suggest that I did something wrong.
Yeah. We need to
And at that point, I wasn't judging
for
that
our
person.
process.
I felt so bad for that person because
Yeah.
this was a younger newbie.
Mhm.
And I'm just thinking, this has got to be social media driven and the divisiveness and the whole new cultural thing. And I'm just thinking, gosh, what a shame. And all I could say to the person was, I'm sorry you feel that way. And I just backed off. Because I also know I can't help everybody.
I'm just going to be plain speaking because I guess people know me for that, I guess. Don't order your shampoos a year in advance. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. And at the risk of not having your favorite spray or shampoo or whatever, you're still going to be doing yourself and your dog, the end client, you're going to be doing the dog a disservice by doing that. So if you, let's say that you don't buy a year in advance and you buy, I always have the mentality of have one to be open and have one waiting in the wings.
Yes.
And that's how I do all my ordering. And we rotate it that way because it keeps it fresh. Sometimes I don't get my spray that I like or an ingredient that I'm used to having. Guess what? I educated myself on ingredients and I can shuffle around. I can pick a different product. I can pick a different brand. You know, everybody's got something to offer to complement my personal toolbox. You know, if I want a body spray, I automatically go to Best Shop because I believe those are the best. They're light and beautiful, and that's all I'm going to say about them. I like them.
And to your point, in the article, I kind of threw a number out there, just like we say, oh, how long, you know, at the end of the day, dump your mixing bottle. Okay. Well, when it comes to ordering, why buy 18 months? Why buy 6 months? Do you know most grooming supply houses offer 2 to 3 day delivery, which is pretty reasonable. Right. There are also most grooming supply houses, my distributors love me, but this helps everybody, is if you buy $99 or $150 of anything, not just a case of shampoo, but I mean, if you needed one bottle of something, you know, $99, $150, you're getting free shipping. So my point is, you can, if with a little bit of research, you can get product within a few days. You're not tying up your cash buying all that excess inventory. You have it for something more important, and you can work through and turn your inventory. I tell people you really, in my personal opinion, shouldn't be ordering more than 3 months. You know,
that's maximum for me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That's a long time in advance to be holding on to a precious, sturdy potato salad.
Yes,
think about that.
When we did the ordering for the big box store that Michelle and I worked with, we would do a monthly order, and so that we would order the same time, unless we had a rush. But I mean, for the most part, you know what your general averages are, how much you go through. And so we would always be rotating that stock because
and that's the safest thing to do. Now, let's have a little come to Jesus thing too. If this was the little meeting where everybody's in a group about shampoo hoarding, there's a lot of shampoo hoarders out there, you know, and I remember doing a seminar and saying, hey, how many have, hold your hands up. How many have, 6 shampoos, different shampoos? And they'd raise their hand. I said, keep your hands.
I got lots more than 6.
And I go, 12. I got up to 89 little bottles. This one person had 89. And I looked at her and I said, honey, you have a problem. You do, and she's, I think
I understand what that is, though. I think that a lot of us, as a small business owner myself, I've had my own small shop, and a lot of us come from a mentality of starvation. Like we're always, everything's on a shoestring. So we feel like we have this little bit of cash. So we want to grab all we can to make sure we don't run out. We never want to be in starvation mode, but we're in starvation mindset. So but that's where I think that comes from, Dave.
But I'm going to come back full circle. Now, if this person who had this problem sat in on this conversation and could keep track of how long she had some of this inventory, knowing what she knows about liquid-based products. I mean, let's be honest. The better products are going to have more protein, botanical animal type ingredients. That's food for bacteria.
Right.
Actually, the better stuff has a higher likelihood of spoiling. Okay. If she'd have had this conversation and saw this, she probably wouldn't have 89 bottles, or within the week, she'd gotten rid of, she's got a problem, half of, she's gotten rid of half of them, So again, I'm just trying to put in real sense, that we really need to start using common sense for common usage is what we're talking
And my
about.
challenge to everyone out there who is discovering new information or maybe revisiting information that they had forgotten about storing your products like that, just be aware that I'm going to push education on ingredients and formulation as much as possible for this industry until I draw my last breath. It does not encroach on any manufacturer. It doesn't harm any formula to know what's in it and how it works.
It ain't
It
a
only
recipe.
makes you a better selector of product for your tailored regimen for your client. So if you're caught unaware and don't have a protein shampoo from the best brand that you like, there's absolutely a good solid protein shampoo from another brand that is just as good, that can absolutely fill in until you get your favorite smell or whatever it is that you like about that product. However, if you understand ingredients and you understand the concept of how they work on the coat and synergistically with all the ingredients within them, you have a better chance at picking a group of products to tailor make your regimen for your client. That's bottom line information. Manufacturers would love to have the feedback from a population of end users who know what they're looking for, who understand how the process works. That we're a dream. We're like going to buy a house from a realtor, but we pick out all the houses. That's what that would make their job a lot easier. So I do encourage each and every one of you to take a class with Barbara Bird, learn about ingredients, take some of Dave's classes. He talks about how formulas work in some of his classes as well. I teach some classes. Melissa teaches some classes. Christine Pearson teaches some classes on ingredients. Get yourself some knowledge so that you're not constantly asking, well, what shampoo is the best for this thing? What shampoo is the best for that thing? 9 times out of 10, it's probably you're not using conditioner. I'll step down now. Step down.
Oh, absolutely. That's a whole nother conversation.
And I'm going to start cutting us off. We got one more.
All right.
Yeah,
I got one more from Jen the Groomer because this is specifically towards Best Shot. So I got to read it.
Okay. Thank you,
Jen the Groomer asked, Dave, I have a 2.5 gallon container of ultra dirty wash and plenish, but I can't find an easy way to get the product out. I won't use pumps, but it takes effort to lift and pour and another minute to get the product to drain through a funnel into the dispensing bottle. Advice.
I agree. Bulk containers. Years ago, we used to get a cardboard box and it had a gel in it. It was a 5-gallon square.
Yeah.
We got away from those because they were so heavy. They shipped great because you could stack them on a pallet, and but they were heavy and cumbersome. So then we had this idea, well, let's get a master case of 2.5 gallons, because 2.5 gallons is easier to handle than 5 gallons. And you're right, it is a bear when you're dealing with bulk containers. I see people use the bulk 5-gallon buckets with the big top. I have an issue with that because it's more prone to contamination when you're dealing with that.
Right.
Now, if you're going to use a pump, that would be the argument. The problem is on that particular product, it's kind of hard to find one that fits it. I would suggest you get a pump, and I'll tell you how to make it right here, little DIY. Buy a regular gallon pump, the kinds that you can take apart. Drill a hole in that 2.5 gallon. Let me do this. Cap right in the middle. You can, if you got a handy son or a husband, they can drill the proper diameter hole. and then you
Or if
put
you're a
that pump
girl
through
and
the
you know
tap.
how to handle a drill.
Yeah. And and some of you know how to do that, probably better than me. I'm not as handy as you would think.
I've done this. I've done this same thing because I had to use European packaging, which doesn't match anything over here at all, ever.
Yep. And you could also get some of the clear tubing at a DIY home center and kind of extend it and just have a designated pump that you keep on hand and keep clean and rinsed out, when you're not using it. But honestly, 2.5 gallons are very cumbersome for some people. I wish I had an answer. For some people, it's not a big deal. I watch some of the people in production, they'll get creative, I'll see them take a 2.5 and that isn't quite full, and they're working on the production line and they're noticing that something's a little short, and they'll lift it up with ease and pour it in there. And I'm like, gosh, how do they do that? Not all of us can do that. So Jen, I wish I had the answer for you, but if you do come up with something creative like a pump, just designate it for that item.
Angie says, for the Best Shot finishing spray, use a gas siphon. She says it works great.
There's a good idea. When I came into this industry, and some of the other younger people on this panel might recall, in the early days of grooming, so much of the equipment was just repurposed technology from some other industry. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. I hope I answered Jen's question. I know it wasn't the answer she probably wanted. But I hear you.
Sometimes necessity is the mother of invention, and we may come up with something, and some groomer may come up with some great invention of dispensing these things out of these bulk containers.
Actually, I just thought of something. If that jug could lay flat on its side, there might be a way of finding a cap with like a bunghole type cap. They call it. It's a little nozzle. There might be a clever way of.
You can always too. What do they call them? Carboys. You can get carboys, but carboys are made to dispense a liquidy liquid. Yeah. Another thing that you can do is, if you don't freak out over it, but it's repurposing. The laundry containers are really good and sturdy, and the spigots themselves, after you unscrew them, they're actually made to dispense really thick and viscous.
That's actually not a bad way to go, because the laundry detergents are primarily what we would refer to as a base, which is a detergent. Right. So I mean, there's really no essential oils or anything crazy that's going to go in there and taint the container. So that's actually not a bad repurposing suggestion. I like that idea.
Yeah. So I've seen a bunch of people do it a different way. I even worked at a salon back in the day that she took, the little fertilizer cups that you attach to the hose. Well, she had
used those
4 hoses from the water attached, and then you would just pour the undiluted shampoo in them, and that's what we would use to apply the shampoo onto the dogs. Although it kept 4 nozzles in front of you while you were trying to do the dogs, I'm sure that we could. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you be creative, and just be mindful about the fact that they all have to be broken down and cleaned.
Yep. This has been fun.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
It took us a couple weeks. We kind of got off kilter a little bit, but we stayed right on target, and we're working through October. So we're just going to keep going with the rest of this. And any last minute questions? We finally got all of our comments over to our side.
They populated really quickly. Dave, it is a pleasure seeing you and talking with you again. I'm sure I'll see you soon. Somewhere.
We will miss you in New England. So I will be in touch though, because I got some other questions for you
please. And if any of your listeners have a question, they can call Best Shot. I'm usually there. I spend probably way too much time there, but I like what I do. They can also email dave@bestshotpet.com if they have a question, either pertaining to
Dave
at Best Shot Pet. Just feel free to reach out. I'll get back with you eventually.
There we go.
Any one of you out there who have not had the pleasure of speaking with Dave,
Or being in one of
any
his
the shows.
classes.
He is a treasure trove of information.
Yes.
He's very easy to talk to. He is a down-to-earth guy, and I suggest that if you have any formulating questions or manufacturing questions, or even want to know what he teaches in his classes, I recommend all of them. He is a pleasure to speak with, and he's got a lot of really great information. So I do recommend you heading over there and at least giving his conversation a go.
Yes.
It's a different perspective.
It is.
It is. Yes. Jennifer, we missed you this evening. I'm sorry you couldn't join us. So we are all sending you thoughts and your family. So hopefully things will get on track. We will see you guys next week. Dave, again, always fun with you.
Yeah. This was fun.
And we do have another guest joining us next week as well. So stay tuned for updates on that. And for anyone going, Melissa and I will be at the New England Grooming Show this coming weekend. We will be I'll be in the Evolution booth. I know Mindy will be there and Chris, and there'll be a good group of us. Melissa, your class is Saturday.
Yeah, no, Saturday all day. Certificate class, the canine massage. So.
Okay. So we will all be there and look forward to seeing everybody there. So
Perfect.
All right. Well, have a great night. And you know what? I'm going to do our closings and then get going. Oh, I know. Our favorite part, right? Our favorite part. Wait for it.